Alright, for today's video we're going to take a look at how to change out an AC air conditioned blower motor that's located under the dash on this Mercury Villager. If you have a different brand car, it's going to be a little different, but still similar enough that you should get a good idea from watching this. We're also going to change out the resistor. The resistor on this model controls the different speeds of the fan. Now, where we are up to this point is that we ran into a problem that the low speeds on the blower were not working. You can still turn the air conditioner on high and air condition the car, but speeds 3, 2, and 1 were not working. That led us to the conclusion that the resistor was bad, which in fact it was bad. But most of the time those resistors go bad because the blower motor goes out. So I've already changed the resistor. It worked good for a couple of days and then it blew out the resistor again. So I know now that the blower motor is bad. It's pulling too much voltage, which in turn is damaging the resistor. So this time we're going to do it right. Alright, here we see the glove box area on this particular model, and the blower motor is located underneath there. I'm a fairly big guy, and maybe a smaller guy could fit underneath there and possibly even remove it without taking that apart. I don't want to damage anything, so I'm going to undo a couple screws here, the glove box, and see if this panel doesn't remove to make the job a lot easier. So I'm going to get started on that. Alright, I don't know how good you can see that, where the camera's going to stay there, but $10mm screws here. Phillips screws down here. Couple more 10mm bolts. Not quite sure if they're 10mm, might be 3/8. Uh-oh. Another Phillips on this side. Looks like I'm going to take apart another panel right there. Here's the progress so far. Looks like I'm going to undo those two bolts. They're covered by a little plastic cover that I'm going to pop out with this little hook tool. And just because I don't want to break it, it seems like it's hung up in there. Perhaps that panel needs to come off first. So I'm going to do that now. See, we're making progress already. Alright, I'm not sure if you could see that, what I've just done, but there were two, you can barely see it, but two trim screws that went here. There you go. Two trim screws that I undid there, and I took off this panel. That exposed two more Phillips. Now, like I said, probably not necessary to take this off, but I want to be sure that I don't damage anything. Okay. Whoop. There is a light. One last thing to disconnect is this light plug. And then we can remove the entire dash assembly. Alright, so here's where we are now. You can see I had to take off the radio trim panel. There was two Phillips screws holding that on, and then I gently, when I was sure there wasn't any other screws and it was just popped into place, I gently pulled it to release it from the dash, and then I was able to remove the entire glove box panel that now exposes the AC area. And this canister here is where the blower motor is that we are going to remove and replace, and the resistor is actually located on the bottom of this. That's going to get replaced too. And so let's move on now to the next steps, and hopefully we'll have some air conditioning blowing here either today or tomorrow, depending on how fast I can get the parts. Alright, I'm not sure how much of that you can see. It's kind of a difficult angle. First thing I'm going to do is try to remove this plug. Can't really see it. Alright, tuck that a little bit out of the way. And I'm gonna go get some nut drivers. It looks like might be 7/16. So it ends up being 5/16, the only nut driver I'm missing. And the back one. Back one's gonna be the problem, right? So what do we got here? Carpeting. Still unable to get on it. Alright, so I ended up just getting that back one out with a wrench. After putting the front ones back in to help support the blower. And there we go. Alright, so I ended up getting that last back screw out with just a 5/16 wrench after putting the front ones back in again. And there we see the blower motor assembly. And as I suspected, it does look different, much different than the replacement one that I got from a local auto parts store. So I'm going to try to match them up real quick, see if perhaps it just looks different. But I do have a feeling that we have the incorrect one, so I'll have to try to see about getting a new one. So here is our original. And this is what AutoZone sold me. You know what? Maybe it is correct. We might be in business. As you can see, they look very different. But the vent holes line up. And let's see the screw. Put the vent. The screw holes line up too. We are going to keep this gasket, and we have to now see that we can get this fan off and replaced onto the new one. Let's check the plugs. Even the plug looks right. I think we're in business. Alright, in the interest of not damaging this seal, I'm going to gently pry it off. Now I have to see about not losing this clip. That's nice. Stab myself. I think it'll be a miracle if we salvage this clip. Squirrel cage removed. And now I see we don't need to salvage the clip because a new clip was provided. New squirrel cage, well, not new squirrel cage, but squirrel cage on the new blower. Now I'm gonna replace this clip. I'm gonna use a nut driver that hopefully I can. There we go. It's a little bit tight. Alright, hope now that the reverse is easier than the takeoff. Only question now is, should we plug it in and give it a spin to make sure it works before? And I think we should go ahead and give it a spin. Now, I have to warn you that I already know it's not going to work on low power, but my hope is that it is going to spin on high power. That way I'll know that the fan motor is good. Ignition's on, AC on, doesn't go on low, but it does work on high. So I'll call that one right. Alright, I'm going to disconnect that blower and I'm going to go ahead and remove the resistor that I know is bad. That's why we're not getting the low speeds. Alright, I don't know how well you can see that resistor. Usually 2 screws to remove it, and undo the plug, and that's all there is to it. Alright, so we need a new resistor, and then put this back together, and everything should work hunky-dory. Alright, not so sure I should show you this. Here's that resistor that we're having problems with. And what happens is, when it gets too hot, there's a meltable area here that melts, and you can see this is kind of brown and burnt. Now, I went ahead and bridged it again with a piece of solder. I'm showing you this because I'm about to try it, but I'm not showing you this so that you'll do it. Obviously, I'm never responsible for anything that you do on your own vehicle, but just from an educational standpoint, to understand how it works, I went ahead and bridged it. It's a smaller piece of solder, so it may not even last, and I'll have to replace the entire resistor, which is about $35–40 part. So if we can get it to work like this, it'll save me some money. Alright, now I'm going to reassemble everything and put the fan back in place, the resistor back in place, and then we'll give it a final test try, and then put the dash back in place. Alright, first thing I'm going to do is replace this resistor. I'm going to go ahead and plug it in. Alright. Well, already forgot something. Alright, I've got 2 of the 3 screws started. I had to go back and put the foam seal on. And now we're going to try for the hard one in the back. do believe we had that one started too. Let me temporarily move this drain tube out of the way. For a second there I didn't see that foam, but it's there. And lastly, the back one we'll do with the wrench. All right. And we'll replace this is a drain, must be a suction to cool the fan. And reattach our electrical connection. Tuck that up and out of the way. Return our carpet. Now we'll give it a little test before we put the dash back together. Okay, everything under the dash is back together. We're gonna go start it up, give it a little test, and if everything works okay, we'll go ahead and put the dash back together. Guess what? We have all 4 speeds. Just a quick shot of everything back together. Didn't know if I included it before. Next step, it's time for a good cleaning and vacuum. Alright, here's a shot from the inside. Not sure if you can hear it blowing. It now works. This is on 1. Slightly blowing, 2, 3, and then on max high. We're going to take it for a little ride, cool off the van, try it out, and also to cool myself off since it is about 95 degrees outside. But it looks like we are finished for today. Alright, I'm going to be honest with you. After taking the blower motor out 3 more times, going to the auto parts store, swapping it out for a new one, I determined the problem with the original one was that the plug had been incorrectly wired and the fan was actually spinning the wrong way. Now with a squirrel cage blower, it's still going to blow if it's spinning the wrong way, just not the way it's supposed to be. But after that problem was corrected, and I put everything back together, it's blowing like an ice cold hurricane in there now. So wife's going to be happy just as soon as we clean this up and get this car back into driving condition. If you wonder why it looks like this, I'm a teacher, so off in the summer, and it's been about 2.5 months that it's been sitting up waiting for me to change this blower motor. So now it's done, and it's going to be ready to go for the time, or just in time for us to go back to work, back to school. So that was a lot harder than what I expected due to having to troubleshoot the problem from the part. But otherwise, it was a fairly easy job, especially after I had taken it apart and actually knew what screws needed to come out to get the blower motor out. So if you have any questions or comments, leave them below. I could appreciate a thumbs up if you found this video useful. And see you online soon. Thanks for watching.